Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. As they say, I'm Hadia, and for those of you who don't know, I talk about things that matter. So for today's video, while I was shortlisting topics, I figured that I don't want this channel to be just a bunch of informational videos where I throw information and facts and topics at you. I want this to be more of a conversation where we discuss perspectives that you could discuss with a friend over chai or coffee in the evening while you discuss your respective existential crises. So today's conversation actually stems from an actual conversation I had with a friend about a certain topic that revolves around being an ally for people less privileged than you are. So the conversation went something like this. I told said friend about a certain incident that had happened with me that I felt had an undertone of sexism and patriarchy to it. Said friend, however, did not quite see it. Like, he was supportive, but his response also included sentences like, "Are you sure that was what happened? Are you sure you're not overreacting?" I don't know, man. I haven't seen it personally, so I'm not really sure what to say about it. And I knew in that moment that I clearly felt more about the situation than he did. And that is my problem with it. Like, I understand that this sort of conversation is not unique and it happens very often, but my problem is that you dismiss a perspective that you're only able to dismiss because of your privilege. Like, each of us, when we're born, we come with a certain amount of privilege that comes with where we're born, who we are, who we're born to, the color of our skin, our financial status, our race, our gender, our ages, everything. And with that privilege, we're able to say that, I don't know if that really happens because it hasn't really happened to me personally, and then get away with it. A usual counter argument that comes to this is not everything requires a reaction from everybody. And while I may agree with that on a certain aspect, but in things that are fundamentally right or wrong, and with everything that's going on in the world with racism and patriarchy and everything, I find that response a little lazy and frankly irresponsible. A better response, however, would have been, I don't know enough about that situation to form an opinion, but I'm going to educate myself. And then you actually do educate yourself instead of expecting the other person to sort of educate you in that series of conversations. Because when we educate ourselves and read up on things, we sort of develop a perspective that is genuinely based on what we believe is right or wrong. Because I believe indifference to these sort of things in today's day and age is incredibly callous, and I feel like we can do better than that. Like, not having experienced something personally is not reason enough not to use our privilege to raise our voice for something we know for a fact to be wrong and that is actively harming a large population of people. And while I say that, I also want to add that when you're debating things of this nature with someone, and if that someone happens to be a person that is on the receiving end of these sort of narratives more than you are, they are going to be invested in it more than you are. It is going to be more emotionally draining for them than it is going to be for you. Because for you, it might just be an educational experience where you're trying to just know more about the topic and it feels like just academic sparring. But for them, it is an entire life that they're bearing out to you, their pain, their everything. And then they're trying to convince you that that pain is real. And for you to only just callously ignore it and brush it off with words like, "I'm not sure if it really happens." I think empathy starts from us making a genuine effort to educate ourselves about these things. And while we're on that topic, I understand that privilege and all of these very serious issues that go around in the world, I can't possibly get to each of them and their complex nature and where they originate from and how they unfold in the society today. I can't really get to all of them in this video, but the point of this video was how to be an ally for somebody less privileged than you are. So in the interest of time, I'm only going to talk about being an ally for somebody not having male privilege in the context of gender privilege and patriarchy and male dominance. So if you're someone who has male privilege, you could maybe follow these 4 tips to be an ally and to be part of the solution. So tip number 1, You are supposed to give women credit. And when I say that, I want to give it a little context. So statistically speaking, women are more likely to attribute their success or anything they're excelling at to hard work, getting help from others, being lucky. While men, on the other hand, more often than not, statistically speaking, attribute it to their personal characteristics, their qualities, competency, leadership skills, all of that. And when the narrative is so different in these contexts, it is hard for women to get credit for their things. And while the world educates women to stand up for themselves more in terms of getting credit, maybe next time when you see a woman being interrupted in a meeting or her idea being stolen or her not being given credit for something that she clearly did, maybe raise your voice and give her that credit, whether you're a peer or a superior. Second thing would be advocate for women. When I say that, I understand that a lot of people already do that when you're friends with somebody, but do you see how that emotional labor is shifted to women to have to convince you to advocate for them just because you're their friend? Like, there is an entire bias to it, but your advocacy depends on a certain level of knowing that person. But I want to give you a little perspective here as well. So when I say advocacy, I read somewhere that women are generally, and it was a statistical analysis that the writer did, where women are generally more likely to succeed if they're thought of as nurturing and friendly and a team player, while men, on the other hand, are more likely to be successful if they display characteristics like self-motivation and stable leadership and all of that. And while that may not be 100% scenario, but when we look at those statistics, maybe next time you could go against the societal norms that dictate that you do not raise your voice for women when push comes to shove. Maybe you could, talk about them in a positive light as you do for your male colleagues, and maybe do that even as a peer or as somebody who may not know that woman personally but you admire their work. Maybe make an extra effort to do that. That might help the situation. Number 3, make professional connections. I cannot stress this enough. In Pakistan specifically, I think social convention dictates the lack of professional connections for women, and I think that actively excludes them from the race. There was a certain term that McKinsey coined which was called the broken rung. I'll just elaborate the gist of what that report basically said. It said that in order to break the class ceiling in the general sense of the word, the biggest challenge for women today in the workplace is not getting into the workplace. Like, they've passed that stage where they're trying to get into the economic workforce. The biggest problem is having that first step up to manager. You cannot really prove it as a manager unless you're promoted as a manager. And we all know the statistics of women having, lower rates of being promoted to that level for various reasons. I'm not going to get into that because that's an entire new debate of sexism. But maybe what you could do is do small things that enable an environment for professional connections with women. For example, make a rule that if they're going to be business dinners or social gatherings or hangouts or any of that sort, it will be open and inclusive for women. Make the conversations more inclusive, make inclusive for women, make space for them to feel welcome and not have a boys club. Maybe when you're making professional connections, maybe volunteer to mentor them. It really does go a long way when we're trying to push women into an equal representation based on a lot of characteristics and not just gender-driven ratios. Number 4, and this 4th thing is basically I can't even believe that I have to say this in today's day and age, but stop being friends with harassers, abusers, sexual offenders, or rapists. I cannot believe that even in today's day and age there are so many people who are all of those things and still have their support from their male colleagues. Maybe it would help the cause a little more if you could actively weed out these sort of people from your professional circles and your personal circles. With those 4 tips, I want to reiterate that I'm sort of still, obviously, all of us, we're all sort of learning and trying to educate ourselves on certain topics as well. And I am too. For example, right now I'm starting a book that's called Invisible Women, navigating the representation of women in a world that is designed for men. I think that's something of that sort. That's the title. But it's basically data bias against women. It's basically about that. I'll let you know what I think about it when I get through it. But the idea is that we need to actively be engaged in conversations and educational plots where we try to overcome problems that actively affect and negatively affect people in marginalized communities. I hope that resonated with you. I hope you liked this video. I'll see you next week. Thank you for tuning in. Take care. Bye.